And now I would like to ask you about your book, which you have recently published and which deals with the poetry of Virgil and the philosophy of Plato. So we know that in Plato's philosophy, there are various sorts of attitudes to sexuality, given that his corpus is huge. But probably the most famous aspect of that in the world today is the concept of Platonic love. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, Plato is famous for that in both sense of the word famous, of course, and that, let's say, conception of love is especially elaborated in his dialogues Phaedrus and Symposion. But in general, it is something that is related to Plato's famous theory of ideas. So we can see that Plato is actually reinventing the notion of love or eros in Greek culture, in as much as eros or love desire is not anymore for him the urge of having contact, especially physical contact with another human being, irrelevant whether that contact is heteroerotic or homoerotic, it doesn't really matter. But for Plato, actually, eros becomes a kind of having a very special relationship with a different ontological level, with the ideas themselves. Eros is transformed. It is not anymore something that actually directs a human being toward another human being, but it directs a human being toward the realm of the intelligible forms, as we say, or ideas, and that is the only really existent thing in the universe for Plato, and that's why that is the sublime actually desire for him, and that's why it's the only really valuable, let's say, way of living, modus existendi. The only really valuable way of living is to devote one's life to the supreme knowledge, the knowledge of the ideas. And he actually conceives eros as a very, very deeply felt feeling for knowledge, a deep love and desire to acquire sublime and supreme knowledge. And consequently, he imagines the ideal man or woman, an ideal human being, it actually as being who suppresses its animal part, who suppresses its biological and physiological needs, and who fully develops its intellectual possibilities. That's Plato's idea, and that's Platonic love, and that's a very sublime ideal of humanity which is hidden behind that concept of Platonic love.
That's fascinating.
Yes, I think that Plato is actually fascinating, and he has been pretty much misunderstood during many centuries of European culture, because it is not, the point is not to somehow completely despise sexuality or something like that. The point is in transforming sexuality, and let's say even sublimating sexuality into a different kind of erotic experience. And now the knowledge becomes something fully erotic. That's inspiring in my part.
Yeah, that's a really interesting development of human sexuality. And when it comes to the other author that you dealt with in your book, Virgil, who was probably one of the most influential poets of all times, people don't know, most people don't know that actually this famous phrase, love conquers all, comes from his work. Where does he use it, and how does he actually conceive of this phrase?
Yes, he uses it in his first book, Dialogues, and Dialogues are fascinating, especially because they display a very deeply elaborated vision of love. And if I may refer to your argument, Dialogue 2 is the most famous homoerotic poem of Roman literature, and it is also extremely important for the vision of love as pain or erotopathy in ancient terms, and that topic, that extremely important topic, actually is developed in the last poem of that book, the Dialogue 10, where that famous phrase, love conquers all, or in original amor omnia vincit, actually is written. It is actually pronounced by a very special character, namely Virgil introduces into his poetic world, into his construct of idyllic space, the Arcadia. He introduces a real poet and a politician. Actually, that poet was alleged authors of elegies, Cornelius Gallus, who in a very moving and very deeply felt way expresses his unhappy, his desperate love for beautiful licorice, and his final words are love conquers all, and it means that love destroys all. So it isn't as we usually understand this widely known phrase, the way to express the power of love in such a way that love can conquer any obstacle, something like that. No, in Virgil, love actually is a very, very destructive force, and Virgil comes at the end of a very long erotic tradition, which begins with a Greek author from the 8th century, Hesiodus, who in his Theogony describes Eros as wonderful, the most beautiful of all the gods, but in spite of being the most beautiful, he's also very destructive in terms of completely abolishing a human power of reasoning. He is the enemy, the ultimate enemy of human mind, nous, and human rationality. Virgil explores that topic, but in his vision, love isn't only the enemy of human rationality, but it also destroys the entire human being. That's how Virgil and Plato correspond, because Virgil shows how that, let's say, ordinary, traditional, we would say maybe natural understanding of the love phenomenon as something that is between two human beings. Love is something that actually is directed from one human to another human. That kind of love is actually a way towards the destruction in Virgil and many other authors who are to be found in both Greek, Hellenistic, and Roman poetical tradition. I think that it is also an insight, a deep insight into human nature that Virgil can offer us.